Back live now. This is the live image outside of the Finnish presidential palace. We should point this is the very same venue where President George H.W. Bush and Soviet Premier Mikhail Gorbachev met in 1990. This particular building has a rich history with Russian-American relations. Of course, the last time a Russian and an American leader met there, it was 1990, a much different world, much different superpowers. It was before the collapse of the Soviet Union, before the creation of the EU as we know it today. But again, the summit going on right now and more live analysis right now. Let's begin in studio with Martin Himel, international journalist. I want to ask your reaction to the top Democrat on the Senate the Senate Intelligence Committee, Mark Warner, said he has legitimate fears President Trump will be taken advantage of today. No one else is in the room. He will be used. Do you think that's hyperbole?
I don't think it's hyperbole. I don't think it's taking advantage of. I think he's got a deliberate tactic or strategy to appease the Russians in many ways for undisclosed interests that we don't know. And maybe those undisclosed interests might be Robert Mueller, who's sitting there as a ghost in the room as well. We don't know. But clearly, if you compare what Donald Trump said at the beginning of the NATO summit, Germany is captive, the EU is a foe, and then how he treated Theresa May in the beginning of their meeting, and listen to him here, my God. I mean, it's like night and day. Thanking Putin for coming, terrific job on the World Cup, congratulations with your team. He's just oozing with praise, where he was oozing there with distasteful comments. So there's a tremendous desire by him to appease Putin. The why, we still don't know.
Oh, and I want to point out, we don't know much of what's being said right now in this closed-door meeting, but Trump did have a few words. He did mention specifically he will talk about trade, he will talk about nuclear weapons, nuclear deproliferation, and he will talk about China. But he did not mention Crimea or Ukraine. He did not mention specifically election meddling or Syria. Is it possible that the Middle East altogether will not be touched on in this meeting? Trump didn't predict he'll talk about it. He said maybe we'll get to it, but didn't make a point of noting Syria. Do you think he'll avoid it?
It's possible that it'll be totally avoided, Jeff. It's possible that it will be talked about, but nothing concrete will be decided. Look, you're absolutely right. Again, in these comments before the meeting, Donald Trump very breezily talked about trade, about military, as he put it, nuclear, China, unclear. Again, these are broad titles, not even talking about any specifics about what he meant about those, let alone about those all-important topics that didn't even make the list. Again, and I've said before on our broadcast over the course of the day, this is not a summit about conventional foreign policy per se. This is a summit, and Dan Raviv mentioned it. I think it's all about Donald Trump's domestic politics. He is using Vladimir Putin as a prop, as a way of sending a signal to his base that he really, truly is serious about poking the American establishment in the eye, not just on trade, not just on immigration. He is willing to fly all the way to Helsinki to meet with Vladimir Putin, to go in the sense to the lion's den, or at least what the American establishment views as a lion's den, to prove that he is serious about taking on the American establishment and signaling to his base that they should take him, as was said during the campaign, seriously, not literally, and that they should really understand that he is there for them and to really connect with his base even more. Why is that potentially dangerous to the United States? Why is the U.S. establishment so worried about it? Because Vladimir Putin is not a prop. Vladimir Putin is going to be able to use this for his own means. And what are those means? Also, to connect to Donald Trump's base, to build support among Republican voters for Russia and a more conciliatory line to Russia. Again, you talked about 1990, that summit in Helsinki between Mikhail Gorbachev and an American president. And it would have then been George H.W. Bush. Again, back then, Jeff, Republicans were the party of the Cold Warriors. That's changed in the era of Donald Trump, and it has changed because, in many ways, of the way Vladimir Putin has played his cards. This could be another seminal moment on that path.
Again, those two men, once they leave this meeting, which should happen at any moment, they will address the cameras. We will carry live right here on Daily Dose. Let me return to Dan Raviv, live for us in Washington. So many questions about if it's appropriate for Trump to even hold the summit now in the first place after the indictment of those 12 Russian spies, the intelligence officers. Trump not even committing to the idea he will bring it up, let alone push for extradition. What do you make of it? The fact that the summit comes just days after this very crucial, eye-popping indictment of all those Russian spies.
It is incredible, not just noteworthy, Jeff, and one wonders whether the special prosecutor Robert Mueller wanted it that way, to get the indictments out there before President Trump would be meeting the Russian leader. Not that Mueller in any way was coordinating this with the Trump administration, maybe putting pressure on the Trump administration. I just don't think it's a coincidence. It is absolutely remarkable. But another thought that came to me as I heard Owen Alterman there in your studio, where were Owen and I 5 weeks ago? In Singapore, waiting for President Trump to have his one-on-one with the dictator of North Korea, Kim Jong-un. And there, too, President Trump insisted that it begin with a one-on-one meeting with only interpreters present. That's Trump's style. He wants to take the measure of the other leader. Also, there's the chance of getting something accomplished in private, again, without the experts present. Did it work in North Korea? A lot of critics of Trump say no. But Trump says yes. There haven't been any test firings of missiles. There haven't been any test nuclear explosions by Korea now for months, by North Korea. And so Trump is proud still of his Singapore summit. The critics still fear that Trump was naive. We'll hear the same partisan divide no matter what happens today, no matter what Presidents Trump and Putin say in their news conference that is loosely scheduled now for 9:50 a.m. Eastern Time, or in Helsinki and in Israel 4:50 p.m. No matter what they say, I think we'll again hear the partisan divide. Democrats will pick up on signs that Trump is naive compared with Putin, but pro-Trump people will say, wow, Trump goes around the world and goes mano a mano directly with foreign leaders, even in problematic relationships.
All right, Dan, stand by. We're back with you again from Washington, D.C. Let's go live back to Helsinki. We have Jordana Miller standing by. Jordana, we should point out we're now past the 90 minutes that the meeting was scheduled to last. It did get started late. What do you make of the comments before the meeting started and the body language between the two men? How important is the personal affectation between these two leaders, especially when you compare it to the way Trump reacted to the rest of Europe just a few days ago?
You know, that's such an important thing to note, even though it's just body language, because if we look back to NATO and we remember that kind of stilted and stiff meeting between, or presser, we could say, between President Trump and, for example, Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel, they barely even looked at each other as they answered questions. And here they seemed very comfortable with one another, President Trump and Putin. They shook hands. Trump, let Putin speak first in Russian with that translator before he made his remarks. And we know that President Trump admires Putin. He has said it before, and he said recently just at NATO that, he's not an enemy. Maybe he's a friend. Right now he calls him a competitor.
All right, Jordana, thank you so much. We'll be back with you a little bit live from Helsinki. Very quickly, Martin, some media calls this a face-off. A face-off implies drama, confrontation. Is this going to be very cordial, do you think, behind closed doors, what's happening now? Very quickly.
I think it's going to be business. It's going to be business about breaking sanctions, about getting trade going. And where it will go, we'll have to see.